In the heart of Mexico, a shadow empire thrives. Its name is whispered in fear and awe. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CGNG. Born from chaos, raised in violence, this syndicate has rewritten the rules of organized crime. Its reach stretches from the jungles of Michoacan to the neon-lit streets of Los Angeles, from the oil fields of Veracruz to the boardrooms of Houston. At its center stands a man as elusive as he is ruthless, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. But this is not just a story of drugs, guns, and blood. It is a story of power, corruption, and the invisible threads that bind nations together. It is the story of Pemex, Mexico's national oil company, once a symbol of pride, now a battleground for cartels and politicians alike. It is the story of stolen wealth, lost lives, and a war that knows no borders. Beneath the surface, $1 billion black market pulses, fueling cars, funding violence, and feeding an insatiable hunger for control. This is the untold story of the King Pemex and the oil that runs like blood through the veins of Mexico and the United States. The year is 2009. Mexico is at war not just with the cartels, but within them. The Milenio cartel, once a dominant force in western Mexico, is collapsing. Its leaders are dead or imprisoned, its factions at each other's throats. Into this chaos steps a man few outside the underworld have heard of, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. Born in 1966 in the rural community of Naranjo de Chila, Michoacan, Oseguera's early life was marked by poverty and hardship. Like many in his region, he sought a better life in the United States, crossing the border illegally in the 1980s. But opportunity proved elusive. Arrested for heroin trafficking in California, Oseguera was deported and returned to Mexico with a new set of skills and connections. By the late 2000s, Oseguera had risen through the ranks of the Milenio cartel. When the cartel fractured, he saw his chance. Leading a faction known as Los Matazetas, the Zeta Killers, Oseguera launched a brutal campaign to seize control. His enemies were many rival cartels, corrupt officials, and even former allies. In 2010, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was born. Its message was clear. The old order was dead. A new power had risen, and it would stop at nothing to dominate the criminal landscape. CGNG's rise was marked by audacity and terror. In September 2011, the cartel announced itself to the world by dumping 35 bodies in broad daylight in Veracruz, a message to rivals and authorities alike. The violence was relentless, the ambition boundless. Within a few short years, CGN had expanded from its Jalisco stronghold into Michoacan, Colima, Guanajuato, and beyond. Its methods were ruthless mass executions, public displays of power, and a sophisticated propaganda machine that used social media to spread fear and recruit followers. But CGN was more than just another cartel. It was a new breed, militarized, disciplined, and deeply embedded in the fabric of Mexican society. Its leaders understood that power was not just about bullets and blood, but about money, influence, and control of the resources that kept the nation running. As the government intensified its war on drugs, CGN adapted. It diversified, moving into extortion, kidnapping, and, most lucratively, the theft of oil and fuel from Pemex. In the shadows, a new empire was taking shape, one that would challenge not just Mexico, but the world. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, is a man of many faces and few words. To his enemies, he is a phantom, rarely seen, always feared. To his followers, he is a legend, a leader who rewards loyalty and punishes betrayal with ruthless efficiency. El Mencho's journey from poverty to kingpin is the stuff of narco folklore. Born in a village where opportunities were scarce, he learned early that survival meant adaptation. His time in the United States, where he was arrested for heroin trafficking, taught him the value of networks, discipline, and discretion. Returning to Mexico, he married into the González Valencia family, another powerful criminal clan. This alliance gave him access to resources, manpower, and a network that spanned continents. As the Milenio cartel disintegrated, El Mencho moved quickly, eliminating rivals and consolidating power. His leadership style was a blend of military precision and psychological warfare. CGNG's operations were marked by discipline, secrecy, and a willingness to use extreme violence. El Mencho avoided the flamboyance of other cartel bosses, preferring to operate in the shadows, communicating through coded messages and trusted lieutenants. By the mid-2010s, El Mencho was one of the most wanted men in the world. The US DEA offered a $10 million reward for information leading to his capture. Yet despite massive manhunts, he remained elusive, protected by layers of loyalists and a sophisticated counterintelligence apparatus. Zhejiang's rise was not a solo act. In the early years, El Mencho forged alliances with other powerful groups, most notably the Sinaloa cartel and Los Chapitos, the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. These partnerships were pragmatic, born of necessity in the face of common enemies like Los Zetas. The Sinaloa alliance gave CJNE access to global trafficking routes, money laundering networks, and political protection. But as CJNE grew stronger, tensions mounted. By the late 2010s, the alliance with Sinaloa had frayed. Skirmishes erupted along key trafficking corridors, and a new era of cartel warfare began. CJNE also learned from its rivals. It adopted Los Zetas' military tactics, recruiting ex-soldiers, establishing training camps, and deploying heavily armed convoys. It embraced Sinaloa's use of propaganda, flooding social media with videos that showcased its firepower and discipline. But alliances in the underworld are fragile, betrayals were common, and the line between friend and foe was always shifting. CJNE's willingness to turn on former allies made it both feared and respected, a force that could not be ignored. CJNE's ascent was paved with blood. The cartel's strategy was simple: dominate through terror. Public massacres, mass graves, and targeted assassinations sent a clear message: resistance was futile. One of the most infamous incidents was the 2015 downing of a Mexican army helicopter in Jalisco. Using rocket-propelled grenades, CJNE fighters ambushed a military convoy, killing soldiers and demonstrating a level of firepower rarely seen outside war zones. The cartel's use of military tactics set it apart. It organized its fighters into disciplined units equipped with body armor, assault rifles, and armored vehicles. Training camps in remote areas provided instruction in weapons, tactics, and counter-surveillance. CJNE also targeted law enforcement and politicians. Bribery, intimidation, and assassination were tools of the trade. In many regions, the cartel operated with impunity. Local police were either complicit or outgunned. The violence took a toll on communities. Mass graves became a grim feature of the landscape, and families lived in fear of both the cartel and the authorities. Journalists who reported on CJNE's activities faced threats, attacks, and in some cases, death. Pemex, or Petróleos Mexicanos, is more than just an oil company. Founded in 1938 after President Lázaro Cárdenas nationalized the oil industry, Pemex became a symbol of Mexican sovereignty and pride. For decades, it fueled the nation's economy, funding schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. But Pemex's success was also its weakness. Decades of underinvestment, corruption, and political interference left the company vulnerable. By the 2000s, Pemex was struggling, production was down, debts were up, and organized crime saw an opportunity. Oil theft, or huachicaleo, became big business. Cartels bribed or threatened Pemex employees, drilled illegal taps into pipelines, hijacked tanker trucks, and stole directly from refineries. The stolen oil was stored in cartel-controlled facilities, then smuggled into the United States, often disguised as waste oil or hazardous materials, using fake paperwork and complicit importers. The scale of the theft was staggering. By the late 2010s, Pemex was losing billions of dollars a year to organized crime. The government launched crackdowns, but the cartels adapted, moving their operations, targeting investigators, and using violence to protect their profits. Oil theft is a complex operation. It begins with intelligence. Cartels gather information on pipeline routes, security patrols, and shipment schedules. Corrupt insiders provide access codes, maps, and warning of raids. Teams of specialists, known as piqueros, drill taps into pipelines, often at night. The process is dangerous. Explosions and fires are common, but the rewards are immense. Stolen oil is pumped into tanker trucks or hidden in underground tanks. From there, the oil enters a shadow supply chain. Fake invoices and shell companies are used to launder the product. Some is sold locally, fueling gas stations controlled by the cartel. The rest is smuggled across the border, mixed with legitimate shipments, and sold to unsuspecting buyers in the United States. The profits fund more than just luxury cars and mansions. They buy weapons, pay bribes, and finance the cartel's expansion into new territories and industries. The black market for oil is vast and sophisticated. CJ is not alone. Other cartels, corrupt officials, and even some Pemex executives are involved. The lines between legal and illegal are blurred, and the stakes are high. In 2025, US authorities estimated that oil theft and smuggling generated hundreds of millions of dollars annually for the cartels. Sanctions were imposed on CJ leaders and companies tied to oil smuggling, freezing assets and targeting financial networks. But enforcement is a game of cat and mouse. For every pipeline shut down, another is tapped. For every front company exposed, two more appear. The profits are too great, the risks too low, and the demand on both sides of the border remains insatiable. The impact of CJNG's oil theft is not confined to Mexico. Stolen oil disrupts legitimate US energy markets, undercuts honest businesses, and can increase fuel prices for consumers. Small US oil companies may unknowingly buy stolen crude, risking legal trouble and financial loss. The flood of illicit profits fuels more than just luxury lifestyles. It bankrolls fentanyl trafficking, arms purchases and corruption, threatening border communities and public safety. Every tank of stolen fuel strengthens a cartel that traffics deadly drugs and leaves families on both sides of the border searching for answers. CJ's reach extends into American cities. Its operatives manage distribution networks, launder money through shell companies, and exploit gaps in law enforcement coordination. The cartel's ability to adapt, to shift from drugs to oil, from violence to business, makes it a formidable adversary. Behind the headlines and statistics are real people, victims of violence, corruption and neglect. In rural communities, families live in fear of both the cartel and the authorities. Mass graves are a grim reminder of the price of resistance. Pemex workers face impossible choices: cooperate with the cartels or risk their lives and those of their families. Journalists who report on oil theft and cartel activity are targeted for intimidation or assassination. The violence and instability drive migration. Families flee their homes, seeking safety in other regions or across the border. The social fabric is torn, and trust in institutions, police, government, even Pemex itself, is eroded. Governments on both sides of the border have responded with force and sanctions. The Mexican military has launched operations to retake control of pipeline corridors and refineries. US agencies have targeted CJ's financial networks, imposing sanctions and freezing assets. But the battle is far from over. The cartels are resilient, adapting to new tactics and exploiting weaknesses in law enforcement. Corruption remains a major obstacle. Bribes, threats and infiltration undermine efforts at every level. International cooperation is improving, but challenges remain. Intelligence sharing, joint operations and financial investigations are essential, but the scale of the problem is daunting. CJ is not static. As law enforcement pressure mounts, the cartel diversifies, moving into cybercrime, human trafficking and new forms of extortion. Its leadership is decentralized, making it harder to dismantle. Pemex faces an uncertain future. Reforms are underway, but corruption and violence remain endemic. The company's survival and that of the communities that depend on it will depend on the ability to restore trust and security. The fight for Mexico's soul is not just about cartels and oil, it is about the rule of law, the strength of institutions, and the resilience of ordinary people. The outcome will shape the future of both Mexico and the United States. The story of CJ, Pemex, and the oil that runs beneath Mexico's soil is a story of ambition, violence, and secrecy. It is a story of what happens when power is unchecked, when corruption is tolerated, and when the truth is buried beneath a veil of lies. But it is also a story of hope, of communities fighting back, of journalists seeking the truth, and of a nation determined to reclaim its future. As long as there is oil in the ground and profit to be made, the battle will continue. But so too will the struggle for justice, dignity, and the right to live without fear.